Hello folks, and welcome to our next video, which is all about fibrous joints. Now we get to kind of get details about these structural joints and be able to understand all the different types. So when it comes to fibrous joints, these are skeletal elements bound by collagen fibers of dense connective tissue. And we already talked about this most often, dense irregular connective tissue. Okay? Now think about collagen fibers that give strength. So therefore, that means you're going to have a lot of stability and less movement. So they're going to be structurally stable, but have limited movement. Some are going to be synarthroses, no movement. Some is going to be ampiarthroses, which has a little movement. And there's three types of fibrous joints we get to focus on: sutures, gomphoses, and syndesmoses. Okay? So let's first get into sutures. And sutures are one that we kind of already know about, because when we're thinking about our skull, we said that the skull bones are coming together through suture joints, okay? And these are going to be fibrous joints of dense irregular connective tissue found only by joining bones of the skull. That's going to be our main focus here. Again, it's going to provide structural stability. You see this happen often, but allows no movement because these are specifically synarthroses, okay, and function. Also, they give us like this wavy, irregular, interlocking edges that can add strength. So instead of having just it going up one single little string of these fibrous, dense connective irregular tissues, then we actually have a wave, like we kind of see a wave here, which again provides extra strength. And this is also going to help prevent fractures. Okay? Now, sutures allow the skull, it does allow skull expansion. Remember I told you that with synarthroses, yes, you're talking about no movement, but there could be a small amount of movement. So the sutures are going to allow your brain to grow during youth, but it's going to ossify or form bone in adults, okay? Now, ossification means that you're fusing suture bones into a single bone form. And that's where it's going to kind of create synostosis. So syn, we already know, is going to be together. Osto is going to be relating to bone, or ost is going to be relating to bone, and what you create is a bony joint. So let's go ahead and get into an example. What do I see here? I see our sutures. It definitely is wavy, and I definitely see the dense irregular connective tissue between it. So this definitely has to be a young skull. Why? Because it did not ossify yet. And then when I'm looking at this particular suture joint here, we still have that wavy pattern, but as you can see, that dense irregular connective tissue has now become bone. And so this has to be a skull of an older person. So what essentially is happening with sutures is that the dense irregular connective tissue is going to be replaced with bone over time through a process called ossification. And now you've created bony joints instead of dense irregular connective tissue joints. All right, now let's go ahead and get into the second type of fibrous joint, which is going to be the gomphoses. Now, these are super unique because they're going to connect bone to teeth, okay? Not bone to bone. All the other fibrous joints we know are going to be bone to bone specifically, but this and all the other joints in general are going to be bone to bone specifically. But the gomphoses or the fibrous joints are super specific because they're going to be bone to teeth. That's what makes them unique. And remember, bone and teeth have two different compositions. They're not made the same structurally, so they are different. Okay? So it said the fibrous joints are found only by bolting teeth to their bony sockets in our gums. And gumpho means to bolt. Okay, so again, this is because you're bolting something into like wood, for example, you know it's going to be structurally stable. Kind of anchors it to that jawbone, but allows no movement except if chewing. So yes, it's going to be synarthroses, but when you're chewing, there's going to be a slight movement that you can have for your teeth can have so they don't crack, right? You don't want to move you don't want to have your teeth to be so non-movable that when you're chewing and your jaws are coming together, it just automatically cracks. You have to have some kind of movement that's going to be happening, okay? Now, what's going to be able to be the thing that is connecting that bolt, right, in our bony gum sockets to our teeth? So what's going to be connecting our tooth to our actual jawbone? That's what I'm trying to say. And that's going to be the periodontal ligament. So peri means around, odont means tooth, once again. So it's going to be a ligament around the tooth, and it's going to be made of dense irregular connective tissue that kind of glues the teeth firmly into their bony socket. Okay? Now, When it comes to the periodontal ligament, it does deteriorate over time, especially when you are a child. So you might have heard the phrase that, oh, you're losing your baby teeth. That's because the periodontal ligament is going to break down, allowing those baby teeth to fall out. And then when the adult teeth grow in, that's when you have the more stable periodontal ligament that's going to be going through adulthood. Okay? So let's go ahead and orient ourselves. And we see here that we have a bolt, which can represent the tooth. Okay? So this bolt is going to represent the tooth. And then we have that bolt kind of course, being anchored into wood. And so the wood here will represent our jaw. Now, surrounding that bolt is going to be our periodontal ligament, or the glue. That's going to help anchor that tooth into the actual jawbone. The ligament or the glue here, we also do have gums, and they're going to have the ability to surround the tooth for protection. So it's two different roles here. Don't get the gums misconstrued with the periodontal ligament. They are two different things. Periodontal ligament is specific to the fibrous joint, and the gums are there to protect the overall bone that's surrounding the tooth as well, and of course the tooth itself. And so that's kind of our wood and bolts analogy. Now let's apply it to an actual person's tooth. As you can see, we have our tooth, which again can be considered our bolt. Just like we see here, we have the periodontal ligament. As you can see, it's many ligaments. And this is going to be making it easier to see that there's many ligaments coming around to help anchor that tooth. So that kind of makes sense because you don't want just one little piece. Again, this is dense, irregular connective tissue, so there's not just one single pattern, and it can be in many different areas and ways, as you can kind of see a little bit here. And again, those ligaments are there to help glue the teeth firmly to their bony socket. Okay, folks, now let's move on to our last fibrous joint, which is going to be syndesmosis. Syndesmosis is all about fibrous joints connecting bones through ligaments. Okay, and these ligaments are made of dense, irregular connective tissue. We're going to be hearing that a lot, right? So what happens is the greater bone separation and longer fibers are going to allow us to have more mobility than sutures or gumphoses. So yes, when it comes to syndesmosis, they are amphiarthrosis. How that happen? Through an interosseous membrane. So again, inter means between, osseous means that we're talking about bone tissue, so it's between bones, okay? And this membrane is going to basically have a broad sheets, that's what we're thinking of, broad sheets of dense connective tissue between certain bones. Let's get some examples. First, let's focus on the lower leg, okay? And the lower leg below the knee is going to be made up of your tibia and your fibula. And as you can see, they're connected through syndesmosis. So we definitely see those ligaments, which is going to connect bone to bone of that dense irregular connective tissue. And then to make sure that there is some type of movement between these two bones, we're going to have interosseous membranes, which are those broad sheets of deep, dense connective tissue, okay? So as you can see, we have our interosseous membrane here. We have the attachment here of the bone on bone, which is going to be through a ligament. And as you can see, the interosseous tissue is made up of a lot of short fibers. So if you have short fibers, you're going to have less movement, okay? Less movement here. And then if we look at our forearm, okay, and we're seeing we have our ulna and our radius. So our radius is going to be next to our thumb. Our ulna is going to be next to our pinky, okay? Now the radius and the ulna are still going to be connected through syndesmosis, as we know, because that's going to connect bone to bone through ligaments of dense irregular connective tissue. But what do we notice that's different from the tibia and fibula? Well, the actual interosseous membrane has longer fibers here versus the shorter fibers we saw here. Longer fibers means that you're going to have more movement. And you can even practice it. You can say, okay, if I stretch out my leg, of course, and I move it medially and then laterally, that's all I can do there. Whereas my forearm, because my radius is allowing me to move my hand as well, then I know I can have more movement with that. And that's what we mean by the amphiarthrosis, okay? There's going to be more movement because of those longer fibers, which allow that radius to then move your thumb medially or laterally, okay, or in or out, and kind of allow you to have like different dance moves. So when you're on an exam or something like that, actually, if you're trying to remember this stuff, make sure you are doing some movement. That's going to make it way easier when it comes to joints, okay? Do some actual movement. Look at the radius and ulna and try to like just twist your arms around from the forearm, twisting your hand around due to that radius. And then when you're thinking of the fibula and tibula, try to do the same, right? As you can see, yes, they can move around, but it's going to be less movement And the reason why is because of that interosseous membrane. Now, I do want to end this video just showing you some other visuals that you can see from your textbook of sutures, syndesmoses, and gomphoses. So just keep that in mind as you go along. You don't always have to go over these visuals. You want to make sure you're looking at visuals in your textbook. Now, if you have any issues with your textbook, please go to the home page, click Pearson Support, and make sure that you are being able to see your full textbook as we go through this course. So the textbook is definitely our anchor here, okay? I'll see you in the next video.